Hey guys, I'm Elizabeth Newsom and welcome to my booktube channel. Today I'm going to be doing a wrap-up for April 2019. So it's been a really long time since I've done a wrap-up and I haven't read a whole lot since I've got to college, at least not nearly as much as I did during my gap year. But with that said, I have read a few books. So I'm going to show you guys some of the recent books I've read, and I'll also be doing the rating my wrap-up as I have previously. So let's go ahead and start with nonfiction. My favorite nonfiction book that I've read recently would be The Healthy Writer. So this was in a previous video as one of my most anticipated reads of this year. I finally got around to reading it last week or so, and some of it was kind of boring. I didn't really need it, but there were other sections of it that gave me really good ideas, like how I should get a stand for my laptop so it's more at eye level, and how I should get an ergonomic keyboard and desk chair. And right now, I'm pretty healthy. I don't have a lot of physical issues I need to worry about. I don't have back pain. I don't have any sort of strain on my wrists. But I know I need to take care of my body now, because if I'm writing long term, I'll have to deal with those problems eventually. So this book was great just for making me more mindful of that. My next nonfiction book would be The McDonaldization of Society. And whenever I say this book, I always want to say it with an accent or something. I want to say it like, The McDonaldization of Society. But maybe that's just me. So this book was required reading for school, which is probably why it wasn't one of my favorite nonfiction books. It was kind of interesting. It had a lot of examples, but it was way longer than it needed to be. But with that said, it was kind of thought-provoking. He talked about the 4 principles of McDonaldization, which we find a lot in our society, which are efficiency, control, predictability, and calculability. So I did learn something from the book. And he talks about the advantages and disadvantages of the system and how efficiency is pretty great, but he also really emphasizes the disadvantages and says how efficiency can be dehumanizing, and how they want quantity instead of quality, and how it's all about making more and making a profit. And this guy's obviously very sad. And in fact, he introduces 3 types of cages at the end, and these 3 cages, I believe, come from Weber's work. The first is the velvet cage, which is people who are within this system and are comfortable in it and like it. The second is the rubber cage, and that's in between, essentially people who are in the system and they're aware of it, but they bend the cage and stretch the bars to allow them to escape when they want to, so they use the system to their advantage. And then finally, there's the iron cage, which is those people who realize that they're in this system and that there's no way to get out. And he said he would kind of be in the iron cage, which is really sad. But again, it was kind of thought-provoking because at least I don't really think of those things. But I kind of disagree with his viewpoints on a lot of things, because I think it's good that society prioritizes efficiency and predictability and calculability. Like, that's just how things have to run. If you're not efficient, then you end up producing a lot of waste, and that's not practical or efficient long term. So yeah, it's how society works, but it's a pretty good thing. Now we're on to the fiction. My favorite fiction book of this month would be A Curse So Dark and Lonely. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but it's one of the most unique retellings I've ever read. So what happens is there's this cursed prince and his guard, and they're trapped. Well, they're not really trapped, but they live on these enchanted castle grounds. And in this enchanted castle grounds area, it repeats a season every year. And so with every new season, the guard is given an opportunity to go anywhere he wants, even in another world, aka modern day Earth, and find a girl, bring her back. And the goal is, if the prince can get a girl to love him, then he'll break the curse. But here's the thing, the prince is normal and he's cute, except during this certain point in the season, he turns into a monster. And it varies what the monster is, but the monster is always the same in that it'll seek out people in blood and try to kill them. So that part is already really unique and interesting, but then what happens is the commander goes to this place on Earth and he picks up a girl. Well, here's the thing. The main character, the heroine, is watching him carry this girl who's kind of drunk, and then she passes out, and the girl's like, oh no, what if he's going to try to abduct her? So then she tries to like hit him with, I forgot, something metal. But then they're on the ground, they're fighting, and then he's teleported back right when they're fighting. So he ends up taking her back for the season. And she's just some girl with cerebral palsy, But she's really a fighter and she tries to escape the palace. She actually climbs down the trellis to escape. And she kind of learns what's going on and tries to help them. But it's really fascinating. Because for one thing, how the curse works is different. For a second thing, the heroine herself is very unique. And for another thing, they don't just stay on the enchanted palace grounds. They actually go out and try to help the villagers in the kingdom, because the kingdom has run into poverty and now there are bandits attacking, and there's another kingdom coming in to wipe out this kingdom because they hear that their ruler's not really ruling stuff. So overall, it was just a really, really fascinating, enchanting read. And it's got to be one of my favorite Beauty and the Beast retellings so far. Then we have To Best the Boys by Mary Weber. I'm almost tempted to say Mary Weber after talking about Max Weber, but anyway. So this was also on my most anticipated reads list, and I got to read it pretty recently within the past week or two. Overall, I enjoyed it. It was really unique. So there's this scholarship offered every year, and the competitors have to go through this maze and win these challenges, and some of them die, but if they win, then they get this scholarship to this certain academy. And the world it's set in is really interesting because there are sirens and there are ghosts that wander around at night and decapitate people or gut them. And the main character, this girl, she's trying to cure this plague that her mother is sick with. And the plague is spreading to all the people in the lower class. But of course, the richer elite people aren't really concerned about it because they say, oh, the lower class just has hygiene problems, so it won't spread to us. We're okay. Someone needs to teach them how to wash their hands. And then this girl sees an opportunity with this scholarship to try and research and find a cure for this plague. But traditionally, the only people who've gone into the maze are guys. So she has to disguise herself as a guy, and her cousin goes along with her, and they go into this maze, and they try to defeat these different challenges. And also, there is a love interest in there, just so you guys know. A love interest is really important to me. But this love interest is a sailor who she hasn't seen in a while. His name is Lute, and he's super cute. And then she also realizes that he's going in the maze as well, so she's kind of competing with him, / on a team with him. And of course, he figures out who she is pretty quickly, so he's not a complete dunce. But overall, it's just really sweet, the relationship between them, and the plot is really interesting and unique. Maybe not as interesting and unique as A Curse So Dark and Lonely, but I really enjoyed it. And then we have both Tainted and Awakened by Morgan L. Busse. I haven't really read a lot of steampunk. I think I've read one steampunk book before this, so I wasn't quite sure how I felt about it, but I'd read some of Morgan's other books, like the Mark of the Raven series, and then also the other series, something about light and truth. I reviewed it a while ago on this channel, but I really enjoyed both of those. So I'm like, hey, might as well give this one a shot because I really like this author. And I did really enjoy it. So there's this girl named Kat, and she has this power, which is she can manipulate all sorts of things around her and make things spontaneously combust, except the only thing is that when she uses this power, she can activate it, but at a certain point she can't control it anymore, and she just starts to destroy everything. And in addition, it feels like she's losing a piece of her soul every time she does it, and she has this numb area in her chest that just like spreads until she can't feel her torso or anything. But that happens later in the series. And her mother's dead in the book. Her father is one of the main scientists working at this tower place. Now that I think about it, these are kind of similar in that there's a heavy theme of science. So this girl goes with this bounty hunter to try and save her because there are people tracking her down. Because at one ball event, she just loses it emotionally and she starts burning this guy who's a jerk, but she still burns him alive, which isn't good. He survives, he's just mutilated. So after that, and people discover her powers, they're trying to hunt her down, so she runs away with this cute bounty hunter, but the bounty hunter doesn't know about her power. He just knows that she needs help. So that's essentially where it starts off. And it's really interesting, the dynamics in their relationship and her power and everything. So again, really unique plot, and I enjoyed the romance, of course. And then finally, there's Candide by Voltaire. This is another school book, probably why it's not super high on the list, but it was actually really amusing. Like, I was laughing aloud at times. For example, there's this one guy who's just hilarious. So his name was Pangloss, and the book says, Pangloss was professor of metaphysico-theologico-cosmonegology. He proved admirably that there is no effect without a cause, and that in the best of all possible worlds, the Baron's castle was the most magnificent of castles, and his lady was the best of all possible baronesses. Or another line that I really like. It says, the Baron's lady weighed about 350 pounds, and was therefore a person of great consideration. Whoa. I'm trying not to die here. But there were a lot of things like that. And then he goes on, the philosopher guy, who's the professor of that thing, goes on to say that things cannot be otherwise than as they are. For all being created for an end, all is necessarily for the best end. Observe that the nose has been formed to bear spectacles. Thus we have spectacles. Legs are visibly designed for stockings, and we have stockings. Just things like that. It's kind of ridiculous, and it's really this guy's refutation to this philosophy called optimism. And optimism is the belief that things work out in the best possible way because God is good and everything that God allows is good. Therefore, there's really no such thing as evil, and evil is just our misinterpretation of things. So it's really interesting, thought-provoking, really funny, but it's really, really dark. Like, all throughout the book, of course, in his refutation of optimism, all these terrible, unexplainable things happen. A lot. And in addition, the female characters aren't very well represented, because there are definitely female characters in there, but they're all raped. Like, I can't think of a single female character who isn't raped repeatedly. And usually that's part of their long, sad stories is, oh, I was raped by this guy, and then this guy, and then this guy. In some ways his humor was really funny, but in some ways I thought it was really inappropriate given the things he was talking about. And it was just like, okay, man, this is just like too much. And what's funny is this book was actually banned when it was originally published. It was banned in several different countries. And I can see why. Especially for censoring purposes, it's pretty, yeah. But overall, honestly, it's one of the school books I most like. With that said, it's, again, pretty dark, pretty dirty, and I'm not sure I would recommend it. But if you have to read it for school, at least it'll be somewhat amusing. Well, there you guys have the books I read in April. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe because I post one bookish video a week. And as always, I'd love to hear from you guys. In the comments, let me know some of the books that you've read in April or recently. Let me know down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye!